Welcome to Coffee and Conversation. I'm Jen Hand from Informatica, and we are here today with Alex Merwin, a self-proclaimed technophile who launched his first e-com business at the young age of 14. While he's also a brewer and incredible photographer, we're actually here today to talk about his passion on delivering social value through AI in the world of healthcare. So Alex leads the growth initiative of Amazon Web Services Healthcare and Life Sciences startup team with a knack for all things digital health. So Alex, we're super excited to have you.
Yeah, Jennifer, it's a blast to be here. It's always odd to be on the receiving end of your own bio. But thank you for the warm introduction. You know how to make me feel welcome.
Well, yes, we're excited to pick your brain today. And I know one of your passions is blending healthcare innovations and digital tech to make the industry more customer-centric, effective, cost-efficient, things like that. So one of the main barriers to making this happen, which we always talk about in the industry, is the spiraling cost of healthcare. So how do you see AI playing a role in tackling this issue of the runaway costs rather than simply the introduction of new services?
No, this is a great place to kick off, and it's a lot of fun to be here today with you and your audience, and for our informal little coffee chat. And the tricky thing here is AI is super powerful. It's exciting. There's a lot we can do with it. But unfortunately, if we just think about the U.S. healthcare system for a second, forgetting about, I live in the UK, so it works a little bit differently here with the NHS. But if you are not bringing in incremental patient load or driving down costs within a hospital provider, you're really not helping the business for that hospital. And even though we all want to focus on outcomes and doing what's best by the patients, when you get into the day-to-day work of goal prioritization, what gets prioritized and what doesn't, you need to be moving one of those two levers. So I think cost is a great place to start. AI is really good at optimization problems. So I think just basic things like bed utilization and staffing, are really useful and low-hanging fruit just to reduce overhead costs. Also, AI is really good at prediction and taking in a lot of unrelated data and finding patterns between them. And so using predictive analytics to lower readmission rates just by identifying more at-risk patient populations and using that to make decisions on who should be discharged and who shouldn't be can be really helpful. Also, AI-enabled diagnostic tools can help increase the efficacy and the accuracy of diagnoses, just reducing the need to retest and order additional labs. And then just the simple, easy stuff like, inputting data into the EHR, voice to text, automating the routine tasks that pull healthcare professionals away from really the work that I think people signed up for when they initially got their licenses, which is having a human connection with somebody who's suffering and trying to make it a little bit better, right? Needless to say, when you're filling out the EHR record, it can feel like you're a little bit further away from that. So you're just thinking about it from a different lens, instead of just those cost centers within the hospital. Let's just think about chronic conditions for a second. So, this represents about 40% of total healthcare spend. It depends on what data source you go to, but this is definitely a really big chunk of the pie. And AI can be really helpful here. Things like remote patient monitoring, post-acute care, post-operative care, anything with just tracking blood pressure, weight, even like wound healing progression, just keeping people out of the hospital, it can be really impactful for driving down cost. And it also gives patients feedback so that they can be more empowered and actually participate in their own care. And we have more of an edge-empowered healthcare system, right, where people can take control of their own care journey and be less reliant on engaging with their healthcare provider, unless they really need to. So I think that those are a few examples that AI can really help.
And I love the empowerment piece, because
Mhm.
I think when we think of AI, sometimes we think of it being out here, whereas the integration for a patient of enabling them to be empowered in their health. And this topic is crucial because as a society, I'd say we love shiny new objects. So the new AI services, we kind of get hooked on like the new things, the new products, what could be integrated in the new sense. Whereas what you're saying is there's so much opportunity to not look at it from that piece, but look at it from let's not add all of these things, let's fix what needs to be fixed rather than like implementing all these other things. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that is. I mean, it does feel as if something important is happening right now with generative AI specifically. And listen, we're attracted to novelty, and you are right. This is what keeps PR and marketing firms in business, right? We are attracted to new and novel things as a species. However, for anybody who's used these new generative AI tools, it reminds me of the first time I used a web browser. I don't know if you remember where you were at or what you were doing. I pulled up the weather. I was about 11 years old. It must have been 10 or 11. And I just went to the Weather Channel because my sister and I used to watch the Weather Channel over and over again because we're nerds. She's a meteorologist now, so she really got the bug. But I just remember going to the Weather Channel and checking the forecast, and it just blew my mind that I could get that information on demand, right? I was in control when I was getting it. I wasn't waiting for it to come to me. Going back to the patient empowerment piece, it's kind of similar, right? Where you can control like when you get the care. So it's okay to get excited. If by leaning into the zeitgeist, it makes it easier to raise capital, secure pilots, communicate with customers. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be sensitive to what's hot and to lean into it. I think where we can end up ahead of our skis is when we lose sight of the problem we're trying to solve and we fall in love with the solution, right? So, these are really useful new tools we can use, but you nailed it. At the end of the day, we need to empower patients to be more in control of their care. And ultimately, my dad is a pathologist and he laughs because I'm involved with all this digital health stuff. We talk about all these fancy tools, and he's like, Alex, eat less, exercise more, and drink less, and it's going to solve all the problems, right? So the not all, but many, right? So we just need to stay grounded in what really needs to happen.
Yeah, and with that sense of being grounded in simplicity, there has been so much buzz around generative AI and the potential to revolutionize drug discovery, clinical trials, optimization, personalized medicine. So let's get excited for a minute and
Mm-hmm.
humor that part of ourselves. So if you could make a prediction about which area will see the most advancement using AI in the next 5 years, what would you pick? And I know this is speculative, but if you could sort of wave a magic wand and say, all right, I think this is the direction where we're going to see the most advancement, what would you pick and
Yeah, I
why?
mean, I think that pretty much every area of health innovation is going to see a positive impact from AI and table generative AI, like just overall machine learning, right? We can just talk about it through that definition. But the question is a tricky one. You're asking about where is the effect size going to be the biggest? So I give this some thought. It's AI-driven drug discovery. Like this is the area that I think we're going to see the most baseline shift. And the reason is it's just so inefficient to develop new drugs and therapies. This supply chain is incredibly onerous, and we see it on the end as consumers, uh, and can get sticker shock at the price of therapies. You look at some of the new gene therapies coming out, and the price tag is in the millions. But part of the reason that drugs are so expensive is because it's so onerous and expensive to develop them. There are that I've seen 10 to the 60th different biochemicals that can be involved with finding certain targets within the body. So that's like equivalent to the number of atoms in the universe. Like you can't model this traditionally. And what AI has shown it's really effective at is parsing through very large volumes of unconnected data and establishing patterns within that data that you wouldn't otherwise be able to perceive. So we work with a number of customers that are doing really innovative stuff in this space. I think that AI is going to help solve for that complexity issue I talked about. The increasing availability of high performance compute in the cloud is really helpful for actually processing all that data, identifying druggable targets and getting them into trials sooner. And really, there's a lot of proof of concept already out there. If you look at a company like Exscientia, they have AI designed molecules that have actually been put into clinical trials and developed. Sumitomo Pharma is the company that they're working with. And ultimately, that molecule, which was meant to treat obsessive compulsive disorder, the trial was halted. They have two or three other candidates that are progressing. So I just think that there's enough there that it's not just buzzwordy. Like there's some meat on the bone. And the current state, it's just not going to work, right? This is a priority for every biopharma company. They're investing hugely in it. The compute's there, the data's there. I'm hugely excited for this. I think we're going to see transformative changes in AI-driven drug discovery.
So listeners, we're marking this episode in 5 years. We're going to come back and see that Alex was a pioneer in the prediction of the advancement in this sphere. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where and how it'll shift, because you're absolutely right. The potential for it is massive, and it's almost a necessity at this point. It's almost like we can't not, because the current way isn't working.
Well, we'll just keep getting sick, right? The if we do nothing, we'll continue to develop adverse pathologies, and we'll get sick, and nature will take its course. But there's the potential's there, and we've already seen some amazing results, and we're going to continue to see a lot of investment there. It's very exciting.
Let's talk a little bit about your work in Amazon's healthcare and life sciences division. So I imagine that you've seen a number of really great solutions that have been implemented to help transform companies in the healthcare sphere. So for you, have there been any favorite or most successful solutions that you've been a part of so far?
Yeah, so this is an impossible question because they're all so exciting. But I will talk about a few customers. So I really do have a spectacular and privileged role where ultimately, if I do my job, companies are getting their solutions to clinical impact faster, right? By using advanced technology from AWS, by pulling in customers that are building on us either from hospitals or biopharma for pilots, by pulling in a good fit on the investment side to help fuel their next round. So it is a lot of fun, and we do get to see a very broad range of companies. I do want to talk about just a few. So Pearl is a dentistry AI company. And you may not think of dentistry as the first area that would, see transformation from AI in healthcare. But it's really interesting because the pathologies are not life-threatening typically. The regulatory bar is more tenable to overcome. So Pearl has secured over 100 regulatory clearances to bring their clinical decision support tool to market. When you're a dentist, you get trained. Yeah, it's like 6 months to a year on how to read and interpret radiology scans. The shades of gray are so subtle, it's really difficult to identify diseased tissue. And then you pretty much don't get trained on it again. And you're doing a lot of other things and running your dental practice. And so you actually really need help. And so Pearl, using computer vision and AI machine learning, they take the scan and they pre-shade it to enable the dentist to make more accurate diagnostic decisions. So
Wow.
super cool company, really, really interesting space, and kind of a surprise. Safely U is another that's quite cool. This is a company based in Berkeley. They're using computer vision to help prevent falls in aging care homes. So, typically when if you have and it's so hard to have a loved one that's suffering from dementia. And as a carer for that person, the thing you dread is getting the call in the middle of the night that your loved one has fallen. And then people don't know what happened before the fall because you can't have a clear conversation with your loved one because they don't remember it, or perhaps they're not able to articulate what happened. And so Safely U has these cameras that in the camera itself, so it's not done in the cloud, it can identify when the fall occurs and it records what happened before then. So it's very secure and privacy compliant. And they feed that information back to the care home so that they can watch the video and see, well, what happened before the person fell. And, speaking with their founder, George, the beautiful story of this woman fell and she hadn't fallen. She had gotten out of her bed and crawled underneath the bed and pulled out a doll that she had there, and she had just fallen asleep on the floor. But the carers didn't know she had a doll. She was caring for a doll. And so they found her on the floor and they watched the video and they realized that she didn't fall. She actively went down to the floor, and they purchased a cot for the doll and they put it next to her bed so she could sleep with it. But like if they didn't have the video, they would have had to call the ambulance and send her to the hospital and call that individual's kids and say, hey, your mom fell, we don't know what's going on. They'd have to do scans and think about the costs that incurs, and not just in terms of financial costs, but just stress and anxiety and worry, right? So very, very cool company. Your Coach Health is another that I wanted to talk about. Eugene and Marina Borohovich are the co-founders there. Eugene was kind of the force behind Bayer's G4A program, so he's been really active in digital health for a long time. There's not enough medical providers. It depends on the specialty you're looking in, but there's just, and especially as we have a aging demographic base, more and more people suffering from more and more chronic conditions. And there's just a gap in the number of credentialed healthcare professionals. Health coaches can help fill this gap, but the problem is it's not a credentialed healthcare profession. So there's high variability in the quality, and it's near impossible for a payer to reimburse for it because of that. And also, if you just want to, source a health coach, it's difficult to know what good looks like. So Your Coach Health is a practice management tool for health coaches. So, they can go on, they can create, availability, they can manage their bookings, they can market their solution. But there's feedback after you complete a visit on Your Coach Health that Your Coach Health uses to create a quality score against that coach over time using AI, which I think is really interesting and novel and kind of a creative approach to the workforce challenge because we don't have enough people to provide care. And then finally, back to the drug discovery and development. So there's a problem with this future that I painted with AI-enabled drug discovery, and it's clinical trials. So, you create this precision therapeutic, it works really great. Okay, great. Like the more refined you get with the therapy, the more difficult it becomes to enroll enough people to show that the therapy is effective. And so then you run into the bottleneck of validating that the therapy works in a clinical trial, which is incredibly expensive. I believe it's 1 of 10 drugs that go into trials successfully complete. It's a mess. It's a mess. Clinical trials is an absolute mess. The CRO space is really complicated. It's fee-based. The incentives aren't always there to be able to get drugs finished quickly. So Lindus is applying AI to transform the way that clinical trials are conducted. They published a paper in Nature where they crawled clinicaltrials.gov. And they trained an AI model on over 400,000 studies there, identified features within trial design that were more predictive for whether or not a trial would work. And they have an ambition to provide feedback to trial investigators on whether or not they need to add more sites, whether or not they need to extend the duration of the enrollment window. What parameters can they pull when they're designing a trial to decrease the likelihood it's going to fail, which I think is very exciting and needed if we're going to realize the potential of all the new therapeutics coming down the pipe. So yeah, just a few, but yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on.
I was going to say, you have a fascinating job you're almost at the forefront of seeing new ways that people are changing healthcare and changing health in general. I mean, that's one of the reasons we started this vlog series, is to hear things like that, because, everyone's kind of in their own little sphere of what they do, the companies they work with, and to hear AI in dentistry or coaches ratings. I mean, that's just incredible to hear about those kinds of things that aren't maybe in my day-to-day or someone who's listening's day-to-day, but it's in your day-to-day. So that's fascinating job you have. And yes, thanks for sharing those, because those are very interesting.
Yeah, my pleasure. A lot of fun. And to solve the problems well, you have to go super deep. And because healthcare is so diverse, and we haven't even talked about life sciences, yeah, there's a periscope effect, right? You got to pop it up and get a view around, and it's really difficult to get that perspective.
Well, we'll have to do a part 2 then, because we are almost at time, and I want to respect your time and let you know how much we appreciate having you on, sharing your expertise and your thoughts and insights, and always very interesting. So thank you, Alex, so much. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Super fun.